We'll just wait for a couple of more people to join in. Is the audio and video okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Alright, thanks. So today is going to be quite a bit of a discussion session because it's mostly regarding research design, like one half of it. So it will be good to discuss, and also if any of you have any project ideas, feel free to float them here so that we can discuss and perhaps get feedback from everybody else as well. Okay, very few people today. Did anyone check out the Birdsong Hero webpage regarding birdsong?
Yes, ma'am.
Alright, did you enjoy it, Lakshmi?
Of course I do, ma'am. As I frequently take what quizzes. What's up? I think Govind is asking something.
Sorry? Yeah, Govind?
What message did you listen in Birdsong?
Oh no, it was just regarding this. I had shared this link. It's called Birdsong Hero. It basically tells you how you can visualize the songs, and so it's very difficult to differentiate between songs just by hearing them. So if you visualize them, it makes it easier. And then when you see what a song looks like, it becomes easier to identify them as well. And then sometimes when you hear songs as well, you can visualize which frequency bandwidth they are vocalizing in.
Yes, ma'am. I checked it out a couple of times. And, as I take the eBird quiz, photo and audio quiz very often, almost on a daily basis. So
Okay.
it helped me in cracking some of those quiz questions in audio section of Merlin and like in the eBird. There is
Okay.
a photo quiz and audio quiz.
I
So
see.
in photo, it's like 20 questions.
Okay.
Just you need to identify the bird, the photo or the audio.
I see.
I usually take up photos and I get around 19 or 18 out of 20 correct. But in
Oh,
audio, I do
excellent.
very poorly. I used to do 5 or 4 only, 5 or 6 only correct out of 20. But
Okay.
after Birdsong Hero, I'm trying to visualize things and kind of,
Yeah.
find the pattern, So
Yeah.
it's kind of helping them.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's very useful to even like in the landscape where I do my work in. I was not familiar with the shola bird species before, but by listening to them and visualizing them very often, it some of them just stick in your head. So yeah, visualizing does help.
Yeah,
Oh,
that when we visualize the pattern, the style of the waves and trunk and the crest and all, if you
yeah,
consequently like if you go on listening to it with various calls and various songs and everything, somehow the other pattern gets stuck in your brain, and when you see the same pattern somewhere, I can recognize that okay, this is that bird.
right.
For me, it was I think. Common hawk cuckoo, yeah. Common hawk cuckoo was the one which I got through with this thing.
Okay, yeah, good going, good going. Okay, I think let's start now. So this is the week 6 of the problem solving discussion for the basic course in ornithology, and my name is Chiti Arvind, and I'm a PhD student at ISA Tirupati, your course TA. So I'll just put up the first question. All right. So, in a heterogeneous population, the population is divided into subpopulations which are internally homogeneous. And this type of sampling technique is known as haphazard sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling, or multi stage sampling. You can put in your choices in the chat box. So this is to deal with sampling techniques. So when you have a research question and you have to carry out some kind of sampling for it, especially if it's quite a large area, you can't sample everything, right? So uh, what type of sampling would you do in this kind of case?
Ma'am,
Uh,
what does internally homogeneous mean, ma'am, here?
Internally homogeneous means that the subpopulation is homogeneous. So you have a heterogeneous population, which means that there are multiple types of let's say species present in an area, but your sampling area, which is your subpopulation, is internally homogeneous. So we have two guesses for C, one guess for B.
And it's basically stratified
Yeah, okay, sure. So, three people say stratified sampling. What do the others feel about this? Govind, your audio is. Yeah, can't make out anything.
I'm between B and C, ma'am.
Okay. Govind, do you want to type?
What was the question mentioned, ma'am?
Sorry, yeah, the audio is really bad at your end. I heard what was the question. I'm not sure which question. What was the quiz? Oh, I just brought it up on the thing. It's called Birdsong Hero. So it's it's a quiz developed by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology to.
No, no, ma'am, he's asking about eBird.
Oh, eBird.
There is this concept in eBird where there is
Lakshmi,
explore.
hang on. Lakshmi, just put that link on the discussion forum maybe, so that like everyone can access it. And Govind, you can check it out there. So, okay, so what about the question out here? Anybody else? Any answers? See, very few people today, but still. Okay, so basically, the majority of you are correct. It's known as stratified sampling. So, stratified sampling is done in. Would anyone like to explain what is stratified sampling? Sure, Govind, go ahead.
Ma'am, is my audio all right?
So far, yes. As of right now, yes. Yeah.
Well, okay, ma'am. Stratified sampling is basically sampling conducted after stratifying the set targeted samples into different data. Basically, the vast sample that we do have is separated to different parts based or to different parts, different data, and then we sample it individually so that each data is individually well represented. For
Yeah.
example, you have you have this large pattern tag that we have to sample for species diversity, for species abundance. Instead of sampling it right away, we can divide the piece of land into the composite habitats, like the more arid habitat and the more lush habitat, and use these abundance such a way. Am I right?
Yeah, Govind, sorry, I think you had like a lot of background, but from what I could hear, yes, you have explained it correctly. For those who did not quite catch what Govind said, it's basically you do stratified sampling when you have a heterogeneous population, so that if you do random sampling or systematic sampling in such a way, you might tend to oversample certain species and undersample certain species, right? So to make sure that all the habitat types, for example, are equally sampled in an area which has a heterogeneous habitat type, you first you stratify them into several layers so that you make sure that you are equally sampling different habitat types, right? So that nothing is overrepresented or underrepresented when you are sampling. And that's about what Govind also had explained.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes,
I
Lakshmi.
find this topic a bit confusing, ma'am. Can I know of any sources which are easy enough to understand for people like
Uh,
us?
I'm not sure about any resources about this, but if you pick up any studies, like you can just do a simple, probably Google search on stratified sampling and do it probably in Google Scholar. Then you can
Okay.
get a bunch of papers that use stratified sampling.
Okay. So
And
if we study papers, we can understand much better than actually theoretically studying.
I mean, you can just Google different types of sampling techniques first, and
Okay.
then to see the application of it, it's probably better to look at a paper. Like, for example, if you're sampling like Shola habitats are a matrix of Shola forests and Shola grasslands, right? But if you or if you're sampling an area which has, like, for example, some of the work that our lab does, we sample timber plantations and shola patches, right? But if we do random sampling, we might only be sampling the timber plantations or only the shola habitat. But in actually a larger plot, you have both types of habitats. So you need to divide them into shola and divide them into plantation and then sample within that, so that you can study like uh, whatever you're trying to study within that particular plot. So you do stratified sampling.
Okay.
Yeah. Because otherwise, if you're doing random sampling, it can be possible that all your plots are in shola patches or all your plots are in timber plantations, and that won't give you an ideal picture of what's happening in that particular area. So
Okay.
your habitat is a
I thought
matrix.
I thought stratified sampling means sampling birds in different niches, ma'am, in the same place or
No,
something.
no, 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 no. Not in different niches. I mean, Bird sampling is usually like when you are sampling for birds, you see everything, right? Like you do point counts, you see ground dwelling birds, flying birds, birds going overhead, but of course you have to like account for like the ones that are flying or are at a particular distance from your line transit or your point count. Yes, Govind.
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
Well, I was trying to give a better example. Um, Basically, say in a particular area, you have to count species abundance of birds. Yeah, instead of simply counting the number of birds that are in the area, we can divide the data, satisfied sampling and divide it based on species. So basically, one species might be abundant, one species might not be so abundant. Is that a good example?
Govind, you're having a lot of background. I'm really sorry. It looks like you're standing in the middle of a traffic jam. But if, yeah, anyone could hear Govind. Govind, if you want, you can type in that example. That might be better. Okay, I'm just gonna move to the next question. So all of you are familiar. Oh, I forgot to put a picture of the Oriental magpie robin, but I'm sure all of you are familiar with this bird. And I want to study the repertoire size of the Oriental magpie robin. Divide population of birds based on species. I'm not really sure about this kind of sampling. It depends on your question. Again, what are you trying to estimate? If you're trying to estimate the bird diversity in a plot that has a heterogeneous matrix, you will divide your vegetation up and then sample in those plots. In this example that I'm giving you. So, yeah, it depends on your question.
Ma'am, I'm asking about the question, doesn't the sample size too small?
Which one? Sorry?
I'm asking about the question, ma'am, which you have put.
Oh, one second. Let's just go through this. First. Hang on, Lakshmi. Okay, so I want to study repertoire size of this Oriental magpie robin, and I'm living in Mumbai, and I've sampled 10 individuals now. Okay, so can anyone tell me what the curve alongside denotes? First.
Doesn't the sample size...
Okay, once again, let's not get to sample size. Let's try and explain to everybody what the graph is showing. So, Ruspe says based on graph, samples look adequate. Okay. But can someone explain what this graph is showing?
The graph is showing that the number of birds that were sampled for the songs, 8, roughly 8 songs or something is enough to know the repertoire, 8 individuals.
Okay, would someone like to take a stab at what this graph denotes? What are the note types?
Size of the song.
Sorry?
Size of the song, ma'am.
Why? Sorry?
The size of the song.
The size of the song. Yeah, the song can be any. Okay, so let me get to Harni's question first. What are note types? I actually should have put a. Let me just bring up the old. I think I had somewhere. Okay, here, parts of a song. Okay, so Harini, for your reference, this is actually a song, and within a song you have multiple note types. Does that make sense? Like this note is different from this note is different from this note is different from this note. Actually, there are no two notes here that are the same technically. Well, these are a little bit similar, but not really. So that denotes a note type. So you have a song, and a song is composed of multiple notes. And yeah, is that okay, Harni?
Ma'am, can you just repeat it, ma'am? Like I lost the audio for a bit, ma'am.
So you have a song with you have a song, and then a song is composed of multiple note types, right? So here on your x-axis you have number of songs that are sampled, and here you have number of note types, and each line out here, which is in a different color, is basically an individual. So basically, if I follow the red line, it shows that I have sampled around over 16 songs of this individual, and when I have made boxes around every note type, I see that the number of note types saturates at about 8 songs. So this is across 10 individuals. Does this make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, has.
That shows the complexity of.
Sorry, Govind?
Does this show the complexity of songs?
This doesn't show the complexity of songs, but it tells you about how many note types are there. Yes, that usually complexity of songs uh, earlier was measured in repertoire size. So in a way, yes.
Ma'am, knowing note types, what's the significance of it, ma'am? Like, coming to know the note types in a repertoire or in a song, how does
Yeah.
it, what's
Well,
the
more
significance of it?
more the number of note types, more varied is the learning repertoire, as well as it has like fitness level implications, as Govind mentioned as well. You can measure, like, it is a measure of complexity, and complexity is also measure of fitness in certain bird species. So more uh, greater the repertoire, more is the fitness. So in a species where, let's say for example, song complexity is selected for is under the pressure of sexual selection, more complex the songs, more higher the chances of securing a mate and increasing their reproductive fitness.
This is pertaining to only songbirds, ma'am, not to
Yes, of course, only songbirds, yeah. Okay, so I think everyone is clear on what this graph denotes, and is this information enough for me to comment on the repertoire size of the OMR? Now I would like songs are combinations of different note types like sa, re, ga, ma. Yeah, sure. Songs are a combination of different note types but separated by a certain time interval. So if you see that they will go like tweet, 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 and then break, and then again tweet, 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 tweet. So your series of notes together by a certain time gap is a song. And the note types that are in a song can be variable. Sometimes songs can be repeated with the same note type. Sometimes songs are completely different. Like one song is different from the next song, is different from the next song. Or you have certain parts of the song that are consistent across consecutive songs, but the first half or the second half or the middle part is variable.
Ma'am, open-ended learners will have much more complicated note types, ma'am.
Sorry?
Open-ended learners, mimic bird mimics, they have much more different types of note types, ma'am.
Sure, they would have.
And ma'am, based on your question, you asked that is this okay sample size? Uh, does it 10 individuals is too small, and even we need to take into account the environmental factors involved also, ma'am. That they haven't mentioned about any kind of environmental factors or something. Is it the breeding season or non-breeding season? Because songs can also comprise calls, and songs also comprise for aggression and every other thing. So all the other factors have to be factored in. I don't think 10 individuals is enough for something. I mean, sample size is small. Like
My concern here is how is repertoire size related to the type of the song? what I know is repertoire size is just a collection of songs, if I'm not wrong.
Could I give the answer, ma'am?
Okay, good question, Sachin. Anyone would like to take this?
Ma'am,
Uh,
could I give both give the answer and answer certain questions?
give the answer and answer the question. Yeah, sure.
Ma'am, my answer to the question is the information enough is no, because uh, no types are only one half of the equation in the repertoire types. The arrangement and stretching and usage of the different note types also can also influence repertoire types.
Which?
And
What? Sorry.
how the note types are used in a song can also affect the repertoire types.
How the
For
note
example,
types are used in a song? I don't
for
clearly
example,
understand.
for example, we have five note types, but these five note types can be arranged and
Correct.
can be
Yeah, okay.
arranged.
Order. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Sure.
And,
But it's still
and this
giving
can
me
and,
repertoire size. So there is no
and this can
variation. There is no variation
this
in
can
the order. That is song type. We are looking at only note types, which is in this case repertoire size.
Ma'am, repertoire means different types of songs and chords put together. Ma'am. Collection of songs and chords and everything
No,
together is called
repertoire
repertoire.
here we are taking only note types. Well, the combinations and permutations of the note types can give you various songs. That is fine. But here we are only looking at note level.
So you mean to say that the repertoire size is equal to the number of notes it can produce?
Note types it can produce.
Correct.
Yeah, correct. In this
So
case,
it's
yes.
not the collection of songs you're saying?
It's it's not the songs. Repertoire size here is the number of note types. So if I can produce 10 types of notes and you can produce 2 types of notes, I have a greater repertoire size, right? Because if you produce, but even if you produce 2 kinds of notes is in like series of like A B A B A B or like A B B B B B B, I still have a greater repertoire size because I can produce A B C D E F G H I J.
Correct. I understand that. I mean,
Yeah.
the permutations will be increasing if there are number of notes that are producible or
Correct.
more, right?
Yes,
I agree
correct.
to that fact. What I'm trying to understand is, I mean, from the earlier lecture by Manjari Jain ma'am, the repertoire size was the collection of a variety of songs by a bird.
Okay, so
I was referring to that.
it depends on study to study, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And secondly, I mean, if I take into consideration that aspect, I can infer that the what is the repertoire size of this particular OMR.
Correct.
But if it is related to the song, then the way of arrangement of that notes will obviously again increase the number of
Yes,
songs.
you're absolutely right on that. Yeah, that's
Okay,
correct.
okay.
Yeah.
ma'am, are OMRs open ended learners?
I think so. I'm not really sure. Don't take my word for it. But they might be because they have quite a complex song. So,
I think they are, ma'am. I think there are also vocals in it. Open-ended
right.
learners. And if they are open-ended learners, this graph wouldn't be enough, right, ma'am?
Well, the graph, let's say it's actual data. The graph is actual data. But what is this graph actually telling me? It's giving me some really good information. I think all of us have agreed that this information is not enough to comment on the repertoire size. But what good information is this graph giving me?
The vocal variety.
Yeah, it's giving the vocal variety, and it is what else is it telling me about?
The potential of the OMR.
Sorry, the
That
potential.
There are 36 notes that they are capable of producing, or that's part of their repertoire, or that comprises the repertoire, in fact.
Right. Yeah, and also do note that these 36 songs is per individual. So across individuals, they can be more, right? It's per individual, it saturates at about 36 note types. But this graph is giving me really good information because it's telling me the number of songs I need to sample to capture the repertoire size, right?
Okay.
So if you
Means
see,
6 or 8 is the threshold.
yes,
Where
correct.
it may just repeat or something.
Right. So this is actually a saturation curve where you can see after a number of 8 songs across multiple individuals, your number of note types is saturating. It's plateauing. There are no new note types added to this. So the same thing you might have covered in some other concept known as this species accumulation curves. Similarly, out here I know that if I get approximately 8 to 10 songs per individual, I can capture the entire repertoire size of that particular individual. Right?
Will it be individual or the species?
This will be for an individual. And now when I pool all the information together, so then that is the second question. Is this information enough for me to comment on the repertoire size of the OMR? What would any of you do differently or add to this?
I need to go to spectrogram
Okay, yes.
to understand what are the variations of the songs that are produced by each individual. There could be overlap or the distinct variety of the songs, and then the superset may give us a OMR repertoire size.
Yes, sure. Okay. And what about in terms of sampling?
So sampling per individual, what I was thinking, I mean, going back to my earlier assumption that if I am able to, if I am able to reproduce 36 different types of notes, I may, this the 8 sampling or 10 sampling might not even give me the correct representation of the different permutations of that notes. So
Exactly my point, ma'am. That's why I felt the sample size is small.
Sure. So that is exactly what I asked, right? Is it enough for you to comment on the repertoire size of the OMR as a species itself? It's not, right? You need to sample OMRs, more number of OMRs, and there's a crucial piece of information that everyone missed out here. Govind, you have your hand raised.
Is it possible to actually get a reliable repertoire size for an OMR? I mean, if they are open-ended learners, they have the potential to learn different notes, different songs are much higher. I don't think it's easy to actually come up with a
You will
reliable
never,
repertoire.
so for any study in biology, you can't have an exact value for anything unless it is like controlled experimental, right? Because you will never have probably heard of all the songs that a bird sings during its lifetime, correct? So, so in this case, of course, yes. Let's say,
I mean,
okay. Let's
we
say,
can't go to the accuracy of covering all these things, but it will be just representation of.
correct, right. So that's, I think you've hit the nail on the head, Sachin. It is representative, and your representation needs to be accurate enough. But out here, one key piece of information that is given is that I'm trying to find out the repertoire size of the OMR, but I'm sampling only in Mumbai. And Mumbai is like a really small dot in the distribution of the OMR, right? So you would have to look at,
Relation specific.
right. So you will have to, yes. So Harini also says restricted only to Mumbai. You need to, Mehala says sample in different populations, which is correct. Somebody also mentioned time of the day, time of the season. You need to sample across seasons and across different times of the day. So,
That's what, ma'am. The whole information is not completely given here. And based on what information given, it's inadequate. That's what I think.
exactly. So, you just needed to mention what more you would add to make this study more robust. Right? So, that was the objective of showing you this graph. So, so yeah, I think anything more? Does anyone want to add anything
Ma'am,
more? Yeah,
I
Govind.
just had a question.
Yeah,
So, I
Rusmik.
mean, just essentially supposing the intention of the study was to basically study OMR song only in Mumbai, only in a particular season, say.
Yeah.
In that case, based on this, would we say that the data is enough? I mean, I'm only referring to the fact that the graph has plateaued. So does that show that in this instance we
Y-
have got
yeah.
sufficient samples?
So it is a trend, right? Like you would never expect, like even if it's hypothetical, you would not expect to reach a saturation so fast. Even imagine if this was like a higher scale, if it was 50, 100 and 150 instead of 12, 24 and 36, you're still seeing it saturate somewhere, which means that there is a limit to the repertoire size of this species.
Right.
And you can,
ma'am,
yeah, Govind.
I was actually, in relation to my previous question, I was not talking about exact value, ma'am. I am well aware it's not possible to come up with an exact value. My argument is that it's not, I don't think it's possible to come up with even a reliable value for open-ended learners like OMRs, even a decently reliable ones. They can learn in a different repertoire based on wherever they are. For example, the repertoire of OMRs in Mumbai might be completely different from where they are in other states like say the Northeast.
Right. Yeah, you're sure. But so there have been huge number of studies on open-ended learners. There is something known as the brown-headed thrasher, of course the nightingale. There are tons of studies done on these birds and on the vocal repertoire of these birds. So it might be maybe if you're interested in this, it might be like good to go and check up some of these papers because you might see some. So we're looking for patterns, right? We are trying to see what's the variation, how to quantify this variation, and what patterns we can see in this. Of course, the question here is very absolute. It is just an example to open the floor for questions. But yeah.
Another aspect,
A better, if I might just, I think a better a better question would be which note types or which songs or note types that most OMRs have in common, like the common baseline they share regardless of their location or their experience. So basically, if we compare the note types of notes by and notes in another state and see which ones are similar, I think wouldn't that be a better idea?
Sure, but for that you first do need to classify it at an individual level and then compare it across individuals.
Of course.
Yeah.
another aspect I was thinking to understand whether this is a representative of OMR or not is to understand what is the spread of OMR geographically. If it's really endemic to Mumbai, then yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. If the species is restricted only to one area, then and one particular small area, then sure. And if it is like so endemic, then you could probably like do more individuals as well, depending upon where you are seeing. So how do you do studies like this? You will start with one individual, right? First, you will first go and annotate like 100 songs of one individual, and then see where the song note types actually is saturating after how many songs. So of course this is a number with this is a graph with very downscaled sample size of number of songs and number of note types. But in a studies, if you're doing something like this, you would see at what number of songs the repertoire size saturates, right? So at least you don't have to sample hours and hours of OMR songs. So you need to kind of narrow down your sampling to some windows. It could be time of day, it could be the number of recordings you're taking, everything, because you need to optimize, right? If you need to find results to your question, you need to collect data within some window frame. You can't just forever be collecting some data. So yeah, all right, I'm just going to go to the next question. Okay, this is a very basic question. So Rohini has been consistently going for a walk at 5:45 a.m. and an automated recorder in the same location has shown a high activity of birdsong at 5:45 a.m. Given the information provided, what conclusion is the most appropriate here? The timing of Rohini's walk and birdsong activity peak are correlated. Birds are singing more during 5:45 because Rohini is walking at that time. Rohini is walking at 5:45 because the birds are singing more at that time. And the timing of Rohini's walk and birdsong activity peak are correlated, but there is no causal relationship between the two. So what conclusion is most appropriate here? You have to pick one. Okay.
As 5:45 a.m. is more kind of a dawn chorus time. It's just coincidence that Rohini walks there and during the dawn chorus time. Is there any necessity that it is even correlated, ma'am? Like it's just nature and she has chosen to walk at that time.
Of course, there is correlation, right? If there are two events happening at the same time consistently, there is correlation. But there is no, I think like most of you have also answered the fourth option, there is no causation between the two, right? They are not related events. Like Rohini's walk is not related to the birdsong activity, and birdsong activity is not related to when Rohini is going for a walk. So there is no, there is a relationship between the two, but it could just be a coincidence. So there is a correlation.
5:45 usually time is the best time to go for a walk, and also in the morning where birds are more
Right. So it's just by chance, right? And there is a correlation between the two because both the events are simultaneously happening at the same time, but one is not affecting the other. So if Rohini does not go for a walk, that doesn't mean that birds are not going to sing, right? And if birds are not going to sing, for example, it doesn't mean that Rohini is not going to go for a walk. So it's not related to each other.
And 3 is also not impossible, right, ma'am?
Sorry?
3 is not impossible.
See, so that's why I said, given the information provided, we have not gotten any information about whether Rohini cares about birds or not.
I'm just stating a possibility.
There can be a lot of possibilities, but that's why it's specified, given the information provided. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next question. Okay, so this is an experiment. Now, this is an experiment to test whether birds have any preference towards fruit color. Okay, it's a hypothetical, well, also can be real situation where I am doing an experimental setup. I have a bird feeder platform which you can see out here in this. Pointer. Okay, so this is my bird feeder platform. I have a camera trap that basically gets triggered on the arrival of the bird to the platform, and any bird movement is recorded by this. in an alternate situation, I am also sitting at some distance from this feeder and observing bird arrivals. I have three types of fruit that are put out here, and they are of three different colors. So, if I am to design a hypothesis or state a hypothesis, what would be my hypothesis for this? And what would be my alternative hypothesis for this? So, what is the null hypothesis and what is the alternate hypothesis?
So from this experiment, I don't think we will be able to draw correct conclusion on whether they are having preference towards a particular color.
Okay.
My reasoning is that all three fruits are of different types. Okay.
Okay,
Secondly,
one second, Sachin, one second. Hold on to that. Hold on to that. You're getting to all the questions answered later.
Oh,
But
you have a question coming up?
yes, lot of questions are there following this. Yeah, you've gotten a head start to it. For us to check if they prefer colors, the size of the fruit needs. Okay. All of you are getting to the questions ahead. 1 second. Yes, Lakshmi? I just want a hypothesis and an alternative hypothesis at this stage.
Ma'am, on the face value of what you have shown, according to the diagram, it shows that the bird prefers ideally a big fruit.
No. This is just representative. This is not showing me any
Okay,
results.
the hypothesis is birds is attracted to colorful fruit,
Okay.
which should also be its food, like what to say, prefers that fruit. It might not try out new kind of food or something. They still used to having that
Okay.
food.
Okay.
That's what I meant.
Okay, so 1 second, hang
hypothesis is-
on, Lakshmi, hang on. So the hypothesis is birds will prefer a colorful fruit. More colorful the fruit is, the bird
Yeah.
will prefer it. And
Different
what is
aspect,
your
yeah.
what is your null hypothesis?
What does
Sorry,
that
ma'am, I didn't understand that concept.
So null hypothesis basically means you have to reject a null hypothesis to accept your hypothesis, right? So null hypothesis basically is that the birds have no preference for any food type.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That would
Okay.
be my null hypothesis. Yeah.
So the food type out here is three.
Ma'am, what? Could I present my?
Sorry, Govind.
Could I present an alternative? Could I present an alternative hypothesis?
Yeah, sure.
Ma'am, it may not be about the fruit, ma'am. It's possible that birds are simply have some kind of attraction to the color itself. For example, if it's
Okay, 1 second. I think you're.
Ripened fruits, ma'am. Overripened
Okay,
fruits.
we'll get to those points later. We'll get to all those points later. But when I'm designing a hypothesis for a question like this, I have put that birds will show preference towards brightly colored fruits, and for an alternative hypothesis, I have said that birds will have no preference for any food type. And some of you brought this up. What is a food type? I have given it three non-native food resources, right? I've given it papaya, banana and chiku, and basically these are non-native fruits that are not found in the habitat of these birds, right? They have different colors. Papaya is orange, banana that's too much bright yellow, but it is pale yellow, and chiku is brown. Okay, so now
Isn't the non-native a catch, ma'am? Like,
uh,
if the birds are not familiar about the fruits, they might not come and eat them.
okay, but I have seen them eating all these fruits when I put it out.
That may not be true, Lakshmi, right? I mean,
Yeah,
they just go there and explore.
exactly.
Yeah.
They just poke into the food or something.
No. I meant according to the hypothesis, preference, ma'am. For having a preference, familiarity should be there. That's why
Birds are opportunistic. If I put biryani there, they'll eat biryani. Is that their native food? No. Right?
Okay.
Like if you put leftover khichdi, leftover roti outside, birds will eat it, right? Because birds are opportunistic. Whatever they get, they eat.
Okay, maybe the anthropogenic thought came up, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, so now I think a lot of you have already talked about this, but let's revisit this. What are the variables I need to take into account while doing such an experiment? Sorry for the typo there.
How ripe the fruit is. If it is raw, it might not emit that amount of
Okay, sure. Fruit ripeness. Then,
Size.
The
ripe
size of the
and the size also,
1 second. I'm
and how
just
much quantity
fruit.
and
I'm just gonna put it in the chat. Fruit ripeness. Then size.
Time of the day.
time
Uh,
of the day
okay, time of the day.
and quantity, ma'am. Like
Quantity, yeah. So basically, you want to see
color.
that birds are not attracted by different quantities. So, what would you do in this given situation?
Same
Ma'am,
quantity
is
for
it a
all
size
time.
same as quantity?
Yeah, you would put the same
Ma'am,
quantity and you would also vary the quantities of the different colors,
yes, ma'am.
right?
And
So,
also we
is it
should
a
also
size?
see how long it travel or take, ma'am. Time to.
no, let's just say visitation rate. If they are visiting,
Okay.
that means that they are eating it. So, they just
Okay.
come, they stand, and they peck on the food.
Ma'am, does the
Is it, ma'am, is it a
competition
size
also
the
be
same as
taken into
quantity?
account, ma'am? If it is a bird feeder, then there will be competition also, like multiple predators. I mean, like even squirrels and all also can come. So,
That is,
uh,
yeah, that is okay, but it still shows me a preference, right? If the bird, you will do a number. So again, that comes into play. What is crucial for this? Forget to account for competition. What would you
Enclosure.
appealing look and appealing taste and smell.
local?
Enclosure, I think, so that to avoid the other predators from coming in.
Yeah.
What Sachin?
Availability to other predators, ma'am. Sachin is
Av-
saying that we should enclose the food in such a way that it avoids it not it discourages the other species apart from the bird, ma'am.
okay, so are you talking about predators to the bird or competition for the same food
Both, ma'am.
resource?
Both, ma'am. Like if squirrels, they come and have take on the fruits,
Okay,
but
but squirrels.
a cat can also come and have a swipe on the birds, ma'am.
Okay, sure. Yeah, okay, fine. So you will keep the thing and ensure that it is predator free. Sure. Uh,
Ma'am,
it
what is
doesn't
predator
depend on how
predation
hungry.
towards, ma'am?
Sorry?
What does predation have to do with
I can't hear you, Govind. Do you want
He's
to?
saying what does predation has to do with this thing? Probably
Oh, there's.
predation could be
Yeah.
predation
Hmm.
could be one part. Another important part, I think, is the competition. The other entities are also eating that.
Yeah,
Sure.
interspecies, ma'am. Birds only
Sure.
different kind of birds are vying
Competition.
for the same bird.
Yeah. Competition, yes, but to get a idea of this, you can't prevent competition, but you can just increase the sample size, right? You're not going to have competition occur throughout the day, every day, right? You just don't do this experiment for 1 day. You do it for like maybe like 40 days, 50 days, right? So you have days with competition and days without competition, right? Does that sound reasonable?
So what can be ideal sample size, ma'am? Like 1 month or something, or like
So you need to do a lot of analysis to find out your sample size, and there is a particular thing known as a power analysis. So for a particular kind of study, if you're doing to find out what is the sample size that is good enough for you, you do a power analysis, and when your power is above 0.8, you get a sample size. So it takes into account a lot of variables and a lot of factors. I don't think we need to discuss that at this point of time, but there are various statistical analysis that you can do to determine what would be a good sample size. Yeah, Govind?
I think he dropped. Can I?
Yeah,
Oh no,
Sachin.
he's there. I have one question. I don't know whether it will be related to this experiment or not. whether the height of the platform will be uh, crucial here or not, or it's
Explain
just
why.
I don't know. Meaning, okay. Another thing is whether where we keep the food, whether birds like actually to be kept in the grass or just normal wooden platform, whether that will be immaterial or not. I'm not sure about that.
Right, yeah. So, good point. So, your location of the feeder should be in such a place where birds frequently do visit. And ideally, you would habituate birds to come to your feeder first and then do
Okay.
an experiment.
Okay.
Yeah, because this is like supplementation and not examining in the wild. So, yes,
I
it is
I
important.
would I would also make sure that either the birds are habituated to this camera trap or there is no sound coming from the camera trap, otherwise it may distract the bird.
Oh,
I think.
yeah, sure. Forget about the camera trap. Imagine you are sitting from your window and watching this. But yeah, it should be such that there are no, yeah, the birds are habituated to whatever your setup is. So you could even habituate the birds to your feeder and just place the camera trap there so that just to attract the birds, they know that this object is always there along with the feeder. So, yeah.
Ma'am,
This experiment is controlled, so why is predation and competition taken into account? Well, it's not controlled, right? Because this is just a feeder in the open. Like, it has no particular structure that prevents predation. And competition can occur because multiple different individuals of the same species or different species can come. Like, for example, I don't know, a myna is feeding, but a crow or a larger bird can come and sit on the feeder. So, like,
oh, okay, ma'am. So this doesn't take place in a lab or something. It takes place in the
no. This is an open experiment because it's not pertaining to a particular species, like any species. Like, let's say, like in an urban environment, like in your house balcony, which receives multiple species of birds, you are doing
In
this.
the for 1 minute, I'm sorry. In the list of the you listed, no, ma'am, whatever we need. We should also add the environment, ma'am, the spot where the bird feeder is. If it is as you just said, if it is an urban environment, there might be, and like if it is a forest in a wild area, it might be different samples and different reaction to it. So we need to see the spot also, ma'am,
So,
where the
what would be your hypothesis?
urban birds will show much more like, influenced results now because urban birds are used to all sorts of fruits, while wild birds they might not be thriving to show such fruits or something. So
But
we
they
might get not
will, they,
genuine.
yeah, even if you go in the middle of a forest and drop your biryani, there will be birds eating it, don't worry. I don't think, yeah, birds are really opportunistic. Unless they are like selective eaters, but yeah. I mean, you can do whether birds in urban areas have stronger preference towards colorful, brightly colored fruits or not, but sure. Harsha says, does the time of the day matter in this hypothesis? Yes, you should be sampling at a time where bird activity is greater. Ideally, well, birds feed throughout the day, but you can't. If you can do your experiment throughout the day, that would be ideal. But if you can't, you should pick a slot where foraging activity is usually high, and it's usually highest during the day. So let's say between dawn and afternoon, like noon time, usually activity fades. But of course, you would not be sitting during the night and doing such an experiment when there is no foraging activity.
Ma'am,
Ye-
what if the birds are attracted to the color itself and not because of the fruit, ma'am? So the birds have some kind of preference for certain colors.
Yeah, so how would you test this? That's a good point you brought up. How would you test this? Here I have put three types of fruit.
Fake
What
fruit.
Yeah, yeah, you would put the same fruit in different colors, right? So, I don't know, probably the easiest thing would be take a banana and then, I don't know, dip it in some kind of food coloring that gives different brightness and see uh, what exactly.
My solution was to place a non-food shaped object in a different, in the same color and see if they're attracted to it.
Oh, then then the bird wouldn't come because they know they can't eat it. So they wouldn't be attracted to the color paper in the first case itself. Then you would probably have to do an experiment with, I don't know, food and brightly colored non-food, which looks exactly the same. What would be your suggestions, Govind?
But I would say the color test should come after the food.
The color layer should come after the food. Or would you present both at the same time and then see a preference?
No, I think first we should finish that food hypothesis and see the text of the color next to
Okay. Uh, sure. Okay, so I'm just going to the next question, which is also part of this itself. I think we have discussed most of it. Uh, what are the drawbacks of the study? I think all of you have already mentioned quite a few drawbacks. Are there any particular things that we haven't discussed that you feel are drawbacks? Yes,
No, I
Deepti.
think should be controlled. That's a drawback.
Hello?
Yes, Deepti. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know, but if a bird is not hungry, does it get attracted to the color of a fruit?
If a bird is not hungry, actually it's very difficult to see if a bird is hungry or not hungry, but in my in my opinion, if a bird is not hungry, it probably would not be on the feeder itself.
Okay, then you said in the afternoon time, at that time we have to do the experiment. If a bird is already feeded or it is not hungry, I think this experiment won't work.
Right,
I
exactly.
don't know.
So that's right. So then time of the day is important, right? So you wouldn't do the experiment in the afternoon, you would do it in the morning.
Some birds are lazy in the morning.
No, actually not. No birds are lazy in the morning. But there might be like differences in foraging activities. I'm not
Okay.
sure of the time of the day. That's something you could probably look. Are particular species foraging more at certain times of the day or not? But sure. But they are opportunistic. They will eat whenever they find food.
Okay.
Uh, Dipti, just curiosity, I
Yes,
mean,
sir.
did you have any observation related to birds being lazy in the morning?
Yes, when I look in the morning when I come out for a walk, I stay in Hyderabad near Ideal Cheru. We see peacocks, we see other birds. So I see many bird species, those are very lazy. Many persons come, they'll be feeding with some grains. They won't come.
Probably,
So I had
I
this
don't know.
doubt.
Okay.
So,
I
No, but
had a
my,
doubt, so I asked.
so
I've been
Deepti,
birding for quite long, but I have not seen inactivity
So
in
what?
birds in the morning.
I,
Yeah,
I,
I have seen, so I just got it out whether my observation is wrong or I just wanted to
They
hear
might
it.
not be lazy as such, they might be already fed or their biological clock might not make them feel hungry or something. I don't think any birds, specifically birds, can. They are like existence to existence. They are on a survival mode every day. They might have predation and such stuff always ticking. So they might not. They being lazy is something which I can't wrap my mind around.
So, Deepti, you mentioned about grains, and these are grains that people put out, right?
Yes.
So that means that it's just overfed, right? Because there's grain 24/7 out there. So, perhaps at that point of time when you have gone, there are no birds there. So, if the food
Maybe.
resource is abundant, You won't find a constant attack of birds on that resource.
Another case of
So
hypothesis and experiment.
coming back to this experiment, if the objective was to test preference for color, not specifically preference for color between these three, then don't we need many more colors?
Yeah,
I don't know
sure.
if we discussed this.
Sure. Yes. Yes, you can put many more colors and colors of various like brightness as well. Like it could be like a bright yellow to dull yellow, or yeah, it's very subjective. Very subjective. So, yeah, good point.
Ma'am, in such a case, can't it be said that the birds are attracted to the, there's a possibility that their birds are attracted to the color itself and not the color of the fruit, right? That was my point.
In this, I think it's difficult because for that you would need like a controlled experiment, right? You would probably have to have a bird in a cage and then see. I'm not actually sure how this even works. So, yeah, food color preference versus color preference is totally different. Color preference, if you're just looking at color preference, it will have to do with related to something of selection, and probably it would you for each bird it would be different, and certain birds, if the opposite sex is differently colored, they might be attracted to certain colors more. So I think it's a whole different ball game.
Ma'am, but since you said these are unfamiliar fruits, the
Mm-hmm.
bird has not yet come across these fruits, right, ma'am?
Sure.
So in that case, it may not exactly view the said fruits as food, and it might be instead attracted to the color alone.
Oh, but
Is
it's
that
eating it. It's the birds are eating all these three fruits. It's not just coming there and going away. Like it's not just an attractant for it to view it. It is eating it, and I think that brings us to a point where we need to see as to what is the calorific value, right, of eating certain food resources. So some might be, and also somebody had mentioned like ripeness. So the sweeter the fruit, probably the more attracted they are, the more rotting the fruit, the more attracted they are to it, the more likely they are to eat it. So yeah, there are like different kinds of things that you do need to control for, which yeah, I think like all of you have like discussed already as to how the study could be improved or done differently. Would any of you like to do a food choice experiment in your backyard? Because yeah, there are a lot of like backyard food choice experiments that you could do.
But to do these experiments, we are like, I don't know about the rest, but I am not at all related to any kind of research field or something.
That's okay.
It might be overwhelming what to do, when to do, what to do. All those
So
stuff.
you could just probably, if you're having like a lot of granivorous birds in your area, like for example, if pigeons are very abundant, you could just put different kinds of grain, right? And you could see what preference pigeons have to certain grain types.
Okay.
Some minor things like this, and then a later stage would be to see as to why they have a preference for certain grain types. It could be because of the size of the grain, it could be because of the, I don't know, color of the grain, it could be because of the nutrient value of the grain. So these are like a lot of
That's what,
things.
ma'am. Basically, we need somebody who is in this field to actually guide us. Ma'am. Without any guidance, we can't do it.
Yeah, so that is what the discussion forum is for, right? Or these sessions are for. So you come up with like studies, like especially today's thing is for research design. So if you do have an idea of a project that you would like to execute, like just feel free to like discuss about it. Probably it's good to maybe just type it out so that everyone can read it, and then people can give their feedback as to how things can be improved or modified.
Okay, ma'am. I just
So,
wanted to tell about you go, sir. You say, sir, you go.
no, I just wanted to add, this is amusing actually, but in the context of bird feeders, the ones where you have grain and those sparrows and pigeons eat from it. I tried putting up a feeder once many years back, and I realized that the birds just didn't realize. I mean, these are common feeders that most people have been using, and the sparrows have been visiting them. But I realized that the sparrows around my side, they were used to eating grain flow, but they never figured out that they could get the grain from the feeder. So eventually, I ultimately hung the feeder right next to where the grain was fallen, but they would still eat only from the grain fallen on the ground and not from the feeder.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think it's probably because of alternative places where the food resource is available. Yeah, birds are like odd. Uh, in garden feeders that you see in temperate regions. So I think feeders are a more 1 second, Govind. Feeders are a more popular and concept in temperate regions because abundance of energy-rich resources are very less, and the type of bird feed that you get is just insane. You have like sunflower seeds and like peanuts and different kinds of I can't even remember.
Ma'am, it's a $4 billion dollar industry, ma'am.
Yeah,
$4 billion industry.
so in India, in tropical countries or like closer to the equator or where agriculture is so popular, you don't have like big areas with abundant resources. I mean, you do have big areas with abundant resources, so birds just probably don't concentrate towards
Exactly,
garden
ma'am.
feeders.
Last, as Rusberi said, I tried my level best to attract birds or something to study their dynamics. The last 5 years, ma'am, and I live in a place where there are lots of scrub around me. Still, till now, no bird has been attracted to the feeder, ma'am. Only the squirrels and such stuff comes, squirrels and rats and stuff, but not the birds. But yeah, these squirrels when they eat and they filter it everywhere, then actually pigeons comes and have it from the ground or something.
Okay.
But no, I think all these are naive and they don't know what feeder because they are much more used to foraging on their own.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is difficult to do such kind of experiment. But I actually did such an experiment at my field station. So yeah, this is actually data from an experiment that has been done in the wild on wild birds. So it can work, it can't work. Several people have tried food choice experiments here in Tirupati, but yeah, they don't get. Actually, habituation is a very important thing. So if birds are not habituated to coming to an area where there is food, it's yeah difficult. And how long it takes for habituation, like as Lakshmi you mentioned 5 years, Ruzbe mentioned like several, like putting the feeder right next to the food source and not yeah coming to the feeder.
Ma'am,
Yeah,
could I
Govin.
make a point?
Yes, Govin.
Well, I have many cases for but
Voice is breaking.
they
Sorry.
yeah, ma'am, I have never, I have seen documentaries about which include feeders, and in them, it apparently is important to make the feeder more appealing to the bird, right, ma'am? So if you're targeting a certain, targeting pigeons or if you're targeting miners or babblers or whatnot, it's supposed to make the feeder more appealing for the specific type or species of bird.
Yeah, that is.
They would be more likely.
You're correct. You're correct. So depending upon what I think, sunflower seeds attract certain birds more than uh, peanuts. Like peanuts, only certain kinds of birds would eat. Peanuts most often attract squirrels, but yes, type of food source does matter. Honey says it's becoming quite common to see birds near dustbins. Yes, correct. Absolutely, that's exactly what I'm saying. That they are so opportunistic, they will eat anything under the sun. Lakshmi says, I'm interested in studying temporal niche of birds in an urban landscape, specifically urban wetland or marsh. What do you mean by temporal niche?
The various preferences of different birds when they forage the time.
Okay, so this is
Time of
foraging.
activity, bird activity.
Temporal
And bird.
niche of foraging activity in birds.
Yeah, okay, I missed it. Okay,
Okay.
I thought I studied it because I just wanted to know because I stay near a wetland. I stay near a marsh, most probably, and systematically from last 3 years, I actually not systematically, but almost daily I bird there, and I found that few birds they come out only later at the time, later in the day, like around 8, 9, 10 kind of thing. Few birds are active at 5 to 6 and such stuff. Few birds take a lot of time, like 12 o'clock or something. Raptors come at like 11 or 12 o'clock. And this, for example, tailor birds, they start singing and they start showing their presence only after 8:30 or 9. But when it comes to koels and barn swallows, they start their activity by 6:30, 6:40, 6:45, 6 o'clock.
Okay,
So this,
Lakshmi, just a small doubt. So this is activity in terms of vocal activity or in terms of foraging activity?
I mean,
Yeah, so
wholesome activity, ma'am.
no,
I don't.
yeah, so that is the thing. So you can't have like something like I want to study the wholesome activity of birds,
Okay.
all birds. You have
Okay.
to break it down into specifics, right? So one aspect could be see the temporal vocal activity, right? When
Okay.
are they
Okay.
vocalizing more or less? Then
Okay.
you can have foraging activity, but foraging activity I'm assuming is a little difficult to study because different birds have different foraging sources, so
Okay.
it might get a bit confusing with that. And you said like raptors and everything, so raptors use thermals and
Yeah. Yeah.
they are active during the day because yeah.
Yeah, I got interested in this topic just because in the last year, eBird um, organizes this big day,
Okay,
wherein the
yeah,
whole day, the all over the world, they were bird the same day.
yes, yes,
I participating in from last 3 years, ma'am. Last year when I was birding, I was free, had no other obligations, so I birded whole day. I found that around the time of like around 12, from 2 to 3:30 or 4, you hardly hear any sound or
yeah,
any, you hardly observe or hear any birds.
right,
And the bird activity is in the peak during dawn chorus and dusk chorus, ma'am. So it's
right.
just like I was interested, what are the factors which influences birds to choose the time they appear, be it vocally or be it physically. So I just wanted to study on that line.
So yeah, I have a curious question, Lakshmi. Did you notice any differences during COVID and not COVID?
Yes, ma'am, that's also there. During COVID only I started birding. So when the COVID hit, lockdown hit, March 17th, I guess, March 17th, 2020, first lockdown was starting. And gratefully I had started birding in February. So I could see the start, in the first lockdown there was not much of changes in bird regularity. But in the second lockdown, birds were much more robust and they came out more as there was no uh, next to nil human presence in the road and such stuff. I live near a railway station as well, so that's a very crowded place and there are a lot of trains coming every 5 minutes or once. But during the lockdown, there was no trains except special trains like the what to
Right.
say.
Activity
Uh,
itself was low. Yeah.
no, yeah, activity itself was low and the whole track was free. I
Exactly.
used to bird and thing. And COVID time, birds were more robust, more active than present one. I could see the difference. If I now sit and check my checklist also, we can see the numbers were more. They were more outgoing. They were coming outside more. Now their voices are drowned in the urban sound, ma'am. That time it was also silent.
Right.
There was no sound.
So, Lakshmi, you basically have a lot of checklists that you have made over the past, let's say, 3 years, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
750
So,
odd.
yeah. So, others out here, could you think of ways and means of how Lakshmi could process her collected data or questions that she could answer with the collected data?
That's what I don't know how to do it. And
I'm sorry, I missed the part about her query.
So she basically has data collected across 3 years
Right,
before, between, like during COVID and after COVID, and
right.
she has how many checklists? 100 and something.
Three,
no, ma'am, 750, ma'am.
Seven.
750.
Okay. So she has 750 checklists distributed all throughout the year, uh, and she wants to know what patterns she can see with this
So,
collected data.
is this checklist related to, I mean, around your house only or different locations?
No, it's a yeah. Checklists have other locations also, but you could say 500 checklists out of the 750 are from that place only, because
Same
that's my
location.
patch. Yeah, that's my patch, local
Okay,
patch.
great. So maybe you can derive multiple things here. One is the time of the day. So when do the birds count has increased or the species count
Yeah,
has
that's what
increased
I'm
during the
interested
day?
in the time.
And another comparison you could make is the frequency. It said that high frequencies were birds in urban areas sing at higher frequencies. Due to the lockdown, you can.
Did she actually noted down uh, the the songs and the audio related
Yeah,
to
I
it?
have that. There is this one
Okay.
beautiful example I got, but I was not able to replicate the recording as I didn't get the chance to record again. But once as I have mentioned earlier in another session also, I did found a red-vented bulbul
Yeah.
manipulating its frequencies and manipulating its calling time according to the railways, train time. Once the
Yeah.
train went out of the station, it started calling again. But I
You
tried my
mentioned that
best.
earlier, right?
Yeah,
You
I mentioned it.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I couldn't replicate the source again. I couldn't get to record it again because maybe the birds have not yet come. I am watching out for it specifically, but I was
You
not able to
can
find it again.
you can simulate that experiment probably if you go to the area where advented bulbs are actually making calls. Then you can play that train sound regularly at that time and see whether that impacts their shift in the call making
Uh,
during the day.
See, this is the issue, sir. This is the problem. See, so many of the leads are coming out. Which lead is workable? Which lead is not workable? I'm just getting confused. Ma'am, Chiti ma'am also said that there are like vocal temporal niche and foraging temporal niche. So
So,
many
No, I
leads.
think my suggestion would be you need to first formulate one question
yeah,
that you want to solve
exactly.
and then go to the next.
That's what, sir. That formulating which is feasible. We need to also see the feasibility. No?
So
This
that,
no, no.
so
Right, you are that red-vented bulbul. If you really want to repeat that experiment, it is possible. So from your earlier 750 list, okay, you can know where you have found most number of red-vented
Yeah,
bulbuls
I
and
know
in the
where it
call.
has found more
So
stock.
now go to the same locations at those timings and start playing back those train sound there. Obviously not interrupting the other people if they are there.
No, those are frequented in the marsh, and marsh stands in the middle of a railway station.
or Lakshmi, like building on what Sachin has suggested, you could also see railway tracks are like large in number, right? And red vented bulbuls are abundantly found near railway tracks. So what you could do
Yes, ma'am.
is perhaps record the songs of red vented bulbuls near railway tracks and red vented bulbuls away from railway tracks, right?
Okay. Where is it
So
leading, ma'am? Like, where does it lead? What does it leads to, ma'am? If
it
I try?
leads to your suggestion of that the birds are altering their, what were you saying, actually amplitude, not amplitude, frequency, right?
They totally stopped calling when the train was honking. When the honking stopped, and then they started calling now.
Okay, so I think probably a good place to sit would be at a railway crossing where you have these road crossings
Yes, ma'am. Yeah,
over
yes,
the
ma'am.
railway
Yeah,
junctions,
yeah.
and just sit there. You'll have number of trains passing by and
Yeah.
honking and everything, and I'm sure you will find red vented bulbuls there.
Yeah, sure.
So that could be one lead. But see, you said that you were getting confused, right?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
the thing is that there are a lot of things that you can do, but you need to do some trial and error to eliminate what is feasible and not what is feasible, right? So I think you would be the best judge of this, based on what your experiences are out in the field. Does this work,
Okay.
does this not work, what works, what doesn't work, and it's also deals with a lot of like, you need to, um, of course, take feedback from others, but as well as think as to what, why could certain things be feasible and why could certain things not be feasible. So as Sachin mentioned, narrow down the question or focus on one question, and then you need not probably even stick to red-vented bulbuls. It could be any bird species. So the question could be overarching, but your target species could be different. It could
Okay.
be one species, could be multiple species, right?
Okay.
Ma'am,
So this is how you uh, what to say, ma'am. If you are a research associate, I mean, you are researching, ma'am. So how did you focus on one topic?
So you,
Like,
so I didn't come with an idea uh, directly off my head. You have to read some literature. You have to see what is the existing literature in that area and what more you are adding to it. So you have, either if
yeah,
you're open to studying in any, so there's a lot about feasibility. So your
okay.
research design should be feasible to be completed within a certain time frame.
Yeah,
I
ma'am,
can,
that's what you said, no, ma'am. Like you just mentioned one point wherein what we can add more to the existing literature if there is any existing literature. If there
right,
aren't any existing literature, then there is no issues, ma'am. This is a new area, new thing. But
sure,
already people have worked. I would like to add some other
correct. So
extra thing to it, and rather than doing it again and again,
you
ma'am.
need to find that literature, and searching for literature is an art which you have no manual for. There will be no manual for how to search
Okay,
for literature. It is
okay,
just a question of trial and error, putting in the
okay.
right keywords, reading more papers and finding more references. It is
Searching is
a,
not an issue for me, ma'am. I can search a lot of things, ma'am. I
yeah,
just want to have a focus on some direction. Like, you are traveling to a new city or something, you need that the signage boards, ma'am. Left or right, take a left. Like
right.
that, I need just a.
So I think you have a lot of valuable data already with you in the form of checklists from one particular area. You can look for patterns, right? So plot the occurrences of birds across seasons, across years, and see whether you're seeing any patterns or not,
Can I
right?
share one thing, ma'am, which I just found out this year? Just one thing, ma'am. One is that the Blitzreed Warbler, uh, they have ventured to my home. My home is like around, you could say 600 meters or 700 meters from the marsh, where the marsh starts. Only this year I have heard and I have seen Blitzreed Warbler opposite to my home in a Prosopis juliflora bushman.
Okay.
Till now, I have heard only it in the marsh area all these years.
Okay.
But now it has ventured this far, like some 700 meters from its actual place. And I thought first I dismissed that they are birds, they can fly anywhere, they can come anywhere. But when I checked my checklist in the back, the previous checklist and all, there was no mention of Blitzreed Warbler the last year and all, ma'am. Only this year I have heard and seen in front of my home. So I
That's
felt that there is
interesting.
a shift and it's traveling a bit and
Choice.
it's finding foraging more, I guess. So is it in a change of food or something? So
I don't know
just
if it is change of food, or does the prosopis provide any food for the blood-thread warbler?
I'm sorry, ma'am, I missed
Does
out
it
because of.
provide any food? Is it fruiting or something?
No, ma'am. It's just it wasn't fruiting. It was just all leaves and all, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. So you have an observation of one thing. It might be worth, like, if blithrid, but this wobbler is common in that area, might be visiting other areas to also see whether other prosopis type habitats do support this blithrid
Uh,
wobbler.
okay, ma'am. Because basically, I have seen them in the marsh area only during the winter season, ma'am.
Okay.
And when the summer onsets, they migrate back, ma'am. So
Right,
it's a
right.
strictly
Yes,
migratory bird,
correct,
no?
correct. They are migratory, but during the winter migratory season, you can just see whether they are like whether majority of them are restricting themselves to marshland, or they are found in novel habitats. Are the novel habitats close to marshlands, or are they like completely like in drier areas? So
Okay, ma'am.
there are a lot of things that you could
Yeah, yeah.
explore.
You have given me a lot of orders.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
ma'am.
Yeah, Govind.
Ma'am, one fact I'd like to bring up: is it okay to compare the data which might be from different species? For example, red-vented bulbuls' strategy of avoiding or circumventing the problems of train noise might differ from another species,
Correct,
right, ma'am?
correct.
So,
Yes, correct.
so shouldn't so if we go after another species, we should record its time, its differences during and after train times first, right, ma'am?
Sure, yes. How would you do this? There's like a really easy way to do this. How would you do this?
Um, I'd measure it. I'd measure the. I research the bird during a lesser amount of disturbance, and then I'd introduce some kind of disturbance when it is singing.
Let's not introduce a disturbance. Let's just assume you are recording near a railway track, but you are studying different species.
I would near a railway track. I would record each. I'd set up recording devices close to each bird individually.
uh, okay, I won't pick on that, but you mentioned another like important thing. You would put a recording device, right? So that recording device or this automated recorder would record sounds throughout the day. So it will record the train sounds. It's going to record the sounds of the birds, and based on the spectrogram and the audio, you will be able to differentiate between the species, right? So this is an easy way to get the train timings, the birds that are vocalizing at different timings and not when the trains are passing through or honking or whatever. And you will get to know whether how different species are interacting with or in an urban environment. Are they changing the frequency, or are they just shifting the time in which they are vocalizing, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so yeah, good point. Okay, so thanks Lakshmi for bringing up the question, and also Sachin and Govind for discussions. I'm going to go to the next question. A little bit on migration now. I think we have about half an hour left. Let's discuss a little bit about migration. So the primary energy source for migrating birds is fat stores, carbohydrates, protein reserves, or energy-rich stopover sites. Okay.
Ma'am, the question is not.
One, yeah.
Clear,
Question is
ma'am, in
not.
the sense like the question is not clear in the sense is it migrate during the migration
Yeah,
or
during the migration. Yeah, migrating birds during migration.
Ma'am, wouldn't it also vary from species to species? Like some species may focus more on their fat stores, others might benefit more from energy-rich stopover sites.
Yeah, so they do. So all birds or most of them do stop at stopover sites, but they don't totally depend on those stopover sites for fattening up, right? So a lot of them do primarily depend on what everybody has answered, fat reserves that they build up. So this is before they actually start migrating itself. They have these fat resources that they store in themselves, and they set off on their migratory path. uh, Lakshmi, do you have a question?
yes, ma'am. You said that you just mentioned now that stopover sites are not exclusively used for getting fattened up or something.
Well, they are used to increase resources, but it's not
What
like
else
a
can
bird
it
will.
use, ma'am?
Sorry?
What else are the use of the stopover site, ma'am?
No,
Then
the
apart from resting and eating.
it's not the primary energy source. Like, you won't find a bird that has not fattened up flying
No,
10,000 kilometers to
no,
this
ma'am, not
energy
that.
rich.
No, ma'am, you mentioned that stopover sites are not exclusively for forage feeding and.
I was saying primarily.
Okay, okay.
So, what is a primary energy source of migrating birds? Right? So, if a bird is going to stop out there, yes, of course, it will eat to acquire more energy resources. But if it does not, if you are talking in a general framework,
And already they will be depleted while they come to the stopover site, ma'am. To an extent, and then they build up their reserves again, and then they fly over.
exactly. So, what was the primary energy source?
Not the fat reserves.
Yeah. So, there you go. Okay, let me just pull up the next question. So birds that use different routes to go to and from between two migrating sites are known as what type of migrating birds? Or what are the migration routes known as? Yeah. Okay. Govind has an answer. Okay.
Ma'am, did you ask two questions or just one?
This is just one. Yeah.
You asked what are birds that use different routes known as, and what are the different routes known as, right, ma'am?
Yeah. I meant what are the different pathways known as? What is this pathway known as?
Oh, okay. Yes,
Pathways, ma'am, but the question is birds that use different routes to go to and from between two migrating sites are known as. It's like the name of those birds which take different
Correct,
routes.
Lakshmi. You have hit the nail on the head. The question is wrong.
That's what I.
You are
because
getting
saying
confused.
The pathways, and here the question is about the birds.
yes, ma'am. You mentioned both pathways and the term for the birds.
Okay, not the term for the birds. We're talking about the pathways. Or even what is the term for the birds? What are these birds known as?
No idea, ma'am. That's why I asked.
Well, they are called
Is it elliptical migrants?
migrators. Yeah, exactly. Elliptical migrants.
The loop migrants and
Yeah, loop
elliptical
migrants. Sure. Yeah, that also works. Loop migration, elliptical migration, which basically means that you are not using the same route to go and to return. So, any examples for elliptical migrants?
Bar-tailed godwit.
Okay,
Amur falcon,
okay,
bar-headed geese,
okay,
and then there is this
Please
bird, flitch
comment
fleet gobbler, ma'am.
okay,
Dorsal crane.
okay,
Common crane, and Richlead warbler, taiga flycatcher, Kashmir flycatcher,
sure,
and there is this one bird which comes from the steppes of Russia to India. And from India it goes to Middle East. From Middle East it again goes to Russia. What species?
okay. I'm also not sure. But yeah, sure. Okay, let's put up the next. Oops.
Ma'am, does it include Arctic terns?
I'm not sure what is the migratory route of Arctic terns, but you could check this up on, I think, eBird maybe, or some literature source. I'm not sure. So I have a video out here, but it's clearly not going to play. Okay, I'm not sure what has happened. Let me just find this and share screen with you. have lost the screen where all of you are, but can you see this? Could somebody give me audio feedback if you can see this screen?
There is no share right now.
Oh, it's not sharing.
Now the share has come, but it's showing that formatting this video. So
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah, this is okay now.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Sachin. So this is basically a screen that is taken from Bird Count India, and this is showing us migration of this particular bird out here, known as the pied cuckoo or Jacobin cuckoo. So I'm just going to play this video. So this basically shows us eBird records of the Jacobin cuckoo across these, well, let's say broadly two landmasses. One is the entire Africa and the other is India and a little bit of Southeast Asia. So based on this, what do you think is happening? Can someone give me some feedback on what do you
They are
see?
migrating to Indian territory during June, July month,
Okay,
and some
And
population
most,
still remains.
one second.
This is
One second,
local
one second, one second. I think Sachin's talking.
And there is still some population that is left throughout the year.
Okay, yes, okay. Harini says migrating to India also during monsoon, which is what Sachin mentioned. Yes,
And actually, this also shows that the migration is local also from South India to North India, not
Okay.
exactly international.
okay,
It can also be in India, in Indian thing. The migration happens from south to north, and then it comes back.
okay,
Local migration.
ma'am,
okay.
also this shows that different populations may or may not migrate, as the South Indian population is not migrating, the ones in Sri Lanka and South India, whereas the North Indian population migrates to Africa and back.
Yeah, sure. So,
And it's also thought that there might be different subspecies.
okay, sure, sure. So you all must remember that this is data taken from eBird records, right? So, what can't we infer from this data based on what everybody has mentioned right now? Or what do we need to do to find out what you have mentioned?
Cannot exactly say it's a local migration or international migration. Huh?
Yeah, correct, right? You can't say this based on, well, you can see that there is some migration happening because a number of observations in the African subcontinent have reduced during one period and increased in India during the same period, which means that there is some international migration that is happening, of course, because there are huge number of observations. But the local migration part is a little bit difficult because we don't know, right, if the birds are coming down south or they are going back to Africa. And
Only
Harini
bird
says,
ringing can happen, help this way.
so yes, so Harini also does mention that bird ringing is important. Bird ringing, for bird ringing to be, if one second, for bird ringing to be effective, you would need to capture the birds, because the birds will have like a certain number on their leg on the metal ring, which you will need to capture the birds and read the numbers. But yes, geologgers or geolocators are a good idea to figure out whether they are local migrants or whether they are um, international or transcontinental migrants. Govind?
For what purpose do they migrate between Africa and like where do they breed and where do they winter or feed, ma'am?
Yeah, so I think they are. This is the. Does anyone know anything about pied cuckoos?
Ma'am, pied cuckoo, they don't breed. Western group, they breed, ma'am, but they come here in the non-breeding season.
Non-breeding season. Okay. So, Govind, if you go to like the distribution map in, they fly with the monsoon winds. Yeah, so that's an interesting component. So basically, as I think Govind, you only mentioned, they are year-round in southern India, right? They don't move. There seems to be always a high number of observations in southern India, but they are also found perhaps breeding somewhere else or not. I think the non-breeding area is Africa and the breeding area is perhaps India.
Sorry, ma'am,
I'm
I was got confused. They travel to the North Indian population. They travel to Africa during the winter season, ma'am, and
right,
they come back during the summer season here.
right.
And the South Indian population is resident, ma'am. They don't migrate.
Well, it makes sense, right, ma'am. Since the northern parts are colder, whereas the southern is more tropical.
Yeah, sure. And as Harini mentioned, they are tracking these monsoon winds, right? So, oops. Okay, let me
But
just
what?
one second,
What's
one
it?
second. Uh, Sorry, let me just bring back my PPT. Now the slide is not changing. Yeah, so actually yeah, Govind, go ahead.
What is the difference? For what reason would the North Indian population want to travel all the way to Africa for, ma'am? Wouldn't it be more efficient to come to South India during the breeding season if
Yeah,
it's really necessary?
that's a good question. I don't know about how these birds are hardwired, whether certain I have no answers to that question. I have no answers to that question.
Ma'am, how different are the population, ma'am? Is the North
I'm
Indian population dependent upon a certain factor in Africa during the winter, like during their...
I'm not sure about that either, but it's worth looking it up. I think that's really worth looking up and getting some information on that. I don't even know if there are any genetic studies on them to show that they are genetically distinct from each other, whether the resident Indian population is genetically distinct from the migrating African population. I would assume in a way they might be if there is no intermixing during the breeding season, but I do not know.
And they are brood parasites, ma'am, so that also might come into play.
Yeah, okay. Brood parasites or not, maybe they, an interesting thing could be that they might have different hosts also, host to
And that's what,
parasitize.
ma'am. That's what I meant. As they are brood parasites,
Sure.
their choice of host might be available more in Africa or something. That's why they are going for.
Sure.
But if they do breed in India, they all breed in India, then they would have no reason to winter in Africa, right,
No,
ma'am?
they do breed in Africa as well. So they do breed in Africa and they do breed in India. So if you look at the distribution and breeding map of the Jacobean cuckoo, you do find them breeding in both these continents.
This comes into question one more thing, ma'am. I have read that article which you had taken out the thing, ma'am, and it explicitly says that this particular map which you showed is built on the observations from India alone, ma'am.
Right.
So it doesn't mean that there is a lack of, it doesn't say that it has taken all the consideration of the checklist from Africa also.
Correct.
So how authentic and how exact are the information put out, ma'am? Like if you don't get the other part of migrate, bird migrates from A to B, we have a lot of information from A, but less information from B. So how to go about that? From like
So I think, as they have already mentioned that as a cautionary thing, that it does show, does paint a better picture of what is happening in India as opposed to what is happening across its entire distribution. It probably gives a better idea on what is happening locally, right? And using geolocators probably in southern populations would give a better idea of whether they are moving up or are completely resident in that area. So
okay, ma'am.
yeah.
So no, I just pointed out this part of thing to answer to what he asked, ma'am. That why does goes to Africa it can stay here only. The more we get the information from African sites, only then we can say conclusively why the bird takes that travels across the Arabian Sea.
Yeah, but based
Lack
on
of
not this
information is what.
information, no, not lack of information. I think this is just representative, but this is not all the information of the Jacobin's cuckoo that is available to any human being, right? So there have been a lot of studies. There are Africa records. If you pull up records of eBird in Africa or take up observations from people who are studying Jacobin cuckoo in Africa and not uploaded on eBird, you might get a better idea, right?
That's what I meant, ma'am.
So if you look at the
eBird only as source is not.
if you look at the Merlin distribution right now of the pied cuckoo, you will see that the distribution is showing a breeding area in Africa, and that is based on some baseline data that is collected by someone. I don't know about the citation for that, but the data is available.
The more we study, only the more we get to know the research is like
Yeah.
we need to have data, complete data to actually say that this is the reason why they are going to Africa.
So there is data that exists. What I'm trying to say is we don't need to collect more data. There is data that exists that is showing us these distribution maps, right? There are people who have found breeding birds or maybe juvenile Jacobin cuckoos out there, or eggs in the nests of other birds, or some form of group parasitism there, which is an indicator of breeding that occurs in the species in that other continent, right?
Okay.
So with regard to what Harini had mentioned about the monsoon, so they are tracking monsoon, and I'm just going to drag this to that part where, so this is actually Mike Prince, if you are not aware, and he is also I do encourage you to watch this. It's a 2-hour video, but you can skip to parts which are interesting.
This is a great e-birder, ma'am.
Yeah.
The e-birder circle, he's a legend, ma'am.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just going to play the part of Jacobin cuckoo and the maps that he is showing. If I am able to, yeah, let's just watch this.
So it's not exactly telling you.
Oh my god.
Right, I'll show you this one just because this is a fantastic animation. This is again Manu, so this brilliant animation. We all know that pied cuckoo heralds in the monsoon in India. Does it? So what you're looking at here is rainfall, which is the greeny blue, a spread of rainfall through the monsoon, and the red is pied cuckoos. So the circles are actual records, and then the red is sort of showing the actual general range. And it's really quite interesting because it does show a very strong correlation between how pied cuckoos move through the country and how the rains move through the country. Whether that's pied cuckoo heralding the monsoon or not is a bit, maybe you're going a bit far, but there is clearly a strong relation.
Yeah, so I think this again brings into light like there is a correlation, but we don't know if that is causation or not, and further studies would indicate as to what is probably resulting in this. So, oh my god. Yeah, so here you have a map from the same bird count India website, which shows that birds are year round during this area and they pass by in the yellow plots. Of course, these are eBird records again, as Lakshmi had mentioned. They are found in the northern areas during the summer and the southern areas during winter. So, yeah, I think probably geolocators or GPS tracking devices would give us the best indication. And I can't remember of the study, but there are a bunch of studies that currently they have done some GPS geolocator fittings on these Jacobin cuckoos. So, yeah. Okay, I'll go to the next question. So, which is the bird that has found to be flying over geographical barriers like high mountains? Is it the grey-lag goose? Is it the Amur falcon? Is it the bar-headed goose? Or is it the storm petrel?
Ma'am, there was this one question which I wanted to ask during uh, the actual talk, but I couldn't because of technical issues. I
Okay.
just want to ask, the answer everybody knows that. Why does that particular bird, barred goose, choose to fly over the Everest, while the common cranes, which also comes from almost the same place, they take the valleys and the cuts between, valleys and the things in between the mountains, passes the valleys and they fly towards India, ma'am. So why does this take an arduous task when there is an easy route?
I think we might need to compare the durations. So this probably is the shortest route from A to B. So the route that the what was it? Sorry, the cranes use might be a longer route, and the bar-headed geese are choosing the route to fly over the Everest possibly just because they can, and they have the physiology that supports flying over such high altitudes in such unfavorable climate. And I think there is a study that looks at what is it looks at how bar-headed geese breathe during these hypoxic conditions of flying at high altitudes. So there are some hormonal and physiological changes that occur in these species that enables them to survive and fly at these distances, which is probably not a physiological modification that happens in the common cranes, and it is a physiological constraint, so that's why it cannot go through that.
So, physiological factors are the primary factors which makes the birds to decide the track or route, ma'am.
I would assume, and it's probably an evolutionary adaptation. I don't know as to what came first, and it could be one reason, and I'm assuming it's the shortest route. But yeah, I'm not sure.
It is the shortest route, ma'am. Is it due? Could it be due to competition, due to arriving in their chosen location at a quicker time period than other birds?
Uh, yeah, I don't know if they start off at the same time and the bar-headed geese arrive earlier, if it is interspecies competition, but I'm assuming that would need to be like a huge evolutionary pressure.
Here
But
I would like to add one more thing Rohit's asking. Common cranes limit themselves to northwest India, ma'am, or northwest and northeast India only. They don't come south. But bar-headed geese are known to come as far as Sri Lanka, Jaffna, and all, and then they go back again, ma'am. So, what my question is, does the duration of their presence in this particular migratory path also decides the way they are going to travel. Like if somebody is there only for a few months, 2 months or 3 months, that's different than some are going to stay for 4 or 5 months.
But
So
I
it's
think all bar-headed geese would be roughly there for the same duration of time, right? Or are you talking about different species?
now I'm talking about in general, ma'am. In general, migratory species, how much time they are going to spend in that place, does it also has a part in deciding how fast and how quick they are going to come out?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about duration depending on speed, but in terms of like breeding sites, migrating to breeding sites, it's probably more beneficial if you arrive there faster. So either you can set off earlier, or yeah, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, right? If all the species are flying over the same area, which would arrive faster or not, it would just depend on the time of leaving rather than the path of flight.
Maybe it's intra-specific competition, ma'am.
So that's what. So it can't be intra-specific competition because all of them are flying over the Himalayas.
Males
Well,
and
no,
females,
let
ma'am.
me.
Males might come, males can come, wanted to come earlier in claim territory, maybe.
That's what I was trying to make, ma'am. What if the birds want they wanted to fly over the territory because they the earlier the bird reached, the more access it had to food, and
Sure,
that's how it
but even the
started.
females are flying over the Himalayas, right? It's not taking the
Well,
valleys.
it's not necessarily male competition. It could be that the the quicker the bird reached its destination, the more access it had to resources there, like food and shelter.
But I think
That's
everyone is missing the point on that all the birds are flying through the quickest path. It's just the time of arrival that is different. Yes, of course, males can arrive earlier, and in some species do arrive earlier to set up territories. It's more beneficial for them. So, shortest path, everyone's taking the same path, but the time of arrival based on when they leave from their site probably differs. If that
ma'am,
makes sense.
maybe because I have one idea, ma'am. Maybe common cranes are taking the path of valleys and passes and not over the mountains. Maybe because they might they can stop and have some stopover sites, while
Sure,
goose they don't stop anywhere. They're non-stop flying or something.
But
sure.
Lakshmi, when I was observing the migration path or data of common crane versus bar-headed geese, the
Okay.
paths are actually completely different. Common cranes are coming from Europe region to India, whereas
Oh, Mongolia, right? Mongolia, right? They are
yes,
coming from Upper Mongolia, right?
there is very less data there. They are going to Mongolia region to some extent, but they are not migrating from Mongolia region to India.
No, no,
I'll
I
share
know actually they are coming through Trans Himalaya only.
I'll
They
share the link
actually
which is
they
coming from word count, and maybe then you can
Yeah, but
like
I think I saw that the common cranes were traveling, passing the Himalayas only. If it is Europe, they don't have to pass Himalayas, right?
they might be coming, but the generic path that I see for common crane is from Europe to
Maybe I'm getting
India.
the species
That's why
wrong.
they don't
Yeah,
have
maybe
the
you know.
obstacle of the
Yeah, maybe I'm getting the species wrong or something. But
probably,
there
yeah.
is one crane which actually crane or some other bird which actually takes the trans Himalayan path, but they follow the passes and the valleys and the cuts between the mountains. While the bar-headed geese and even some greylacs they fly over the Himalayas. So that's what I intrigued.
actually
Okay.
some populations take the trans-Himalayan route while others don't. Is that was what was mentioned in the lecture, right?
Yeah, that's what. That's what
Oh,
I.
of the bar-headed geese?
Amur Falcon, I think.
Amur Falcon also comes from Mongolia only, but they pass through the Himalayas through the valleys and then they come to Bombay stopover sites and then from there they go to Africa, South Africa.
Cool. We can probably like look up some tracking papers and maybe start a thread on the discussion forum regarding this. But yeah. Um, okay. We are already over time. So thanks for joining in today, everyone, and let's meet next week for carrying out. Okay, Harini is giving some references there. Cool. All right. Thanks, Harini. We'll follow up and we can discuss further on the discussion forum. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ma'am, do you know how the Ruppel's Griffin vulture was discovered, ma'am? How it was discovered to fly so high?
I have no idea. Sorry.
Actually, it was the bird itself wasn't discovered, ma'am. It was at the bird. There was a collision with a jet aircraft at 37,000 feet, and it was later discovered that Ruppel's Griffin vulture had collided with the turbine. That's
Oh,
how they
I see.
discovered the-
Yeah.
That's how.
Bird hits. That's interesting. Yeah. Thanks for
So
that.
it's possible that they're even flying higher, ma'am.
Probably, yeah. With I think the GPS trackers with some altitude sensors or accelerometers would able to give us some information on that. But yeah, thanks for that. All right. See you all next week, and thanks for joining in today.